We're going to take a quick 15-minute break before the program resumes, and then we should be listening to Steve Ruby and the Apogee Corporation to explain to us why great service delivery isn't enough. And he should know because, as I said, he is one of the few owners of a 5-star service certification from SDI. So don't go away, use the 15 minutes wisely, and then we'll see you back here at 12. I had explained to people that you've got a fairly unique position because you've represented in your former job one of the few 5-star certified delivery organizations, which is super prestigious. And now you're Chief Experience Officer. So there's a story there, Stephen. I would say take it away.
Thanks a lot, Alan. Right, I just want to share my screen. Hi, everyone. If someone can say they can see the screen, and I think we're good to go. We should be good to go. All right. So, firstly, thanks, Alan. Thanks to the SDI and the XLA Institute for inviting me along today. Really happy to be part of this session. I hope everyone who's attended the previous sessions today have had a lot of insight and taken a lot away from it. What I want to do is really I'll start by explaining a little bit about me, my background, and then what I'd like to cover today, and then some takeaways. So I've been in the industry for about 28 years. As Alan says, I've represented or worked in the service management leadership roles pretty much the whole of my career. And I've worked for organisations including NatWest, P&O Nedlloyd, where I was a consumer and buyer of services within those organisations. And then as a partner or provider in Logica, Computacenter, Capita, and for the last 8 years at Endava, where, as Alan says, we were fortunate enough to achieve our 5 stars in 2019. And I must say, I can't really take the credit for that. Though, when I joined the organisation, we were already at 3 stars back in 2016. But it's really the hard work that our service desk management team and our service management teams put in over the subsequent years. I guess where I am now is really a reflection of what we've done and where I've kind of taken my career and taken what I've learned from those service leadership roles. I'm now with Apogee, who are a leading provider of managed workplace services, are probably known more for its deep heritage in managed print and multi-brand print management across Europe. And since 2018, we've owned by HP, we're an independent subsidiary of HP. So we've got some really good backing in our corner, and I've joined them as the Chief Experience and Operations Officer, which essentially is a recognition of the evolution from a managed workplace provider into an experience-centric managed services provider. And in my day-to-day job, I look after the service operations, customer management, service desk, field engineering, SMO and XMO, and everything kind of in between. So for today, really what I want to cover and to share my personal experiences are on 3 things. The importance of your service delivery frameworks within your organizations, how it's evolving and what that means to service professionals and how we need to adapt and adopt. And then the third thing is around key stakeholder groups in your organization that need targeting. And that's really targeting where we can help them ensure that they evangelize and support the movement that is into the experience economy. So, develop a solid service delivery framework. Now, the foundations, in my experience, to effective service delivery can normally be grouped into 5 areas. And you can see these on the screen here. And I won't go through the detail, but what I will do is to touch on each of them briefly. The service design behaviors and how we design processes, the tooling choices, how we transition services and integrate services, and all the security that rolls around them. The way we're organized and governed, making sure strategic business alignment remains core of what we're doing as an MSP or a services organization, or just internally working with business functions. The engagement models define roles, how we plan, review, action, and steer decisions as we're running day-to-day services and experiences. and the skills and capability development. So making sure we have the people with the right skills in the right roles at the right place, working on the right things. The operational excellence is probably where this manifests more. The day-to-day management of services, the ability to analyse and report on what's important to stakeholders and consumers of services, an optic on performance and productivity to ensure we're constantly refining and improving, and also staying true to service compliance requirements in an organisation. Under improvement and change, it's really our ability to adapt, to learn and learn fast. And that covers really cost optimization and the effort, the money value of time and the effort that we invest, the way that we improve and change the employee mindsets and to ensure high engagement, and also the customer delight. And I guess part of this is also the transformational activities, and you could badge that as big T, small t transformation within your organization. And the last thing really is the kind of, well, how well are we doing? The experience of all of this. Remember, this is coming from a services perspective. So what is the feedback and the actions required from the services that we deliver? What value have we created and continue to create? And what journey maps do we need to stage and start designing so that it can help us stay ahead of where those needs are coming? And then also the care programs that wrap around that. Now, this is a generalization, and there are many pillars within a service delivery ecosystem, and this could be 20 times longer. But in my personal experiences, I think if you've got these 5 pillars and have structure and material and you have the expertise, you're on a very, very good fitting to provide great experiences. Now, all of this, of course, in the services industry is supported by best practice frameworks and enablement tools. You've got organisations like the SDI and the XLA Institute and other organisations out there that provide valuable resources and support, along with our good old friends at ITIL and other frameworks and methodology that can support that journey. But what's really important is that the outcomes of what we're actually delivering and what we exist to enable is measured, and making sure that we have a grasp on that measurement so that it becomes relevant, it remains relevant, and it actually adds value. Now, in terms of what we've learned over the many years of service management and service delivery, I've kind of put some feelings and emotions on this, because I think experience is all about emotion and it's how you feel. So over the years, as a service delivery community, we've created familiarization in the way we work. We've introduced consistency. That then breeds confidence. We've developed strong capabilities across service, introduced routines in ways of working that stems and drives assurances that leads to trust. And while we've been doing that, we've also been driving efficiency in the way that we operate, that breeds reliability. And these things really are allowing us to deliver to traditional SLAs, KPIs, performance measures, the ability to report and analyze. But I guess important for the service communities is delivery on commitments. For many years and many years to continue, the service management and service delivery functions are there to deliver on the commitments that are being asked of them. However, as we know, and you've probably heard many times today, perspectives and expectations have changed. And that's a good thing, because we need that change. In Apogee, we simplify what we do by aggregating what's changed. And we do this by talking about addressing our customers' unmet needs and measuring the moments of truth. Now, all of that is possible providing you have a sound business operating model. So this is the core of your organization, making sure that you have environments that can breed the right conversations, you have stability, you have the ability to really focus on taking service delivery outcomes to create service experiences that delight customers. You also need, as we all know, highly engaged workforce. And I think in the service delivery community, in the service management world, we've developed some fantastic professionals. Many of you on this call will probably identify and recognize whether you're part of that engaged workforce or you know people in your organization. The framework components are still important. So we layer them on top of the sound business model and a highly engaged workforce. But you'll notice that experience has moved. Experiences move because we need to elevate the experience. We need to start measuring experiences while we're still supporting it with inside organizational transactions. And an important change is having data indicators and the ability to dynamically instrument or change as a result of changing needs with our customers or consumers. So our experience elements don't go away, they just elevate. We're elevating now. Part of the evolution is to bring experience at the forefront of the conversation, where 15, 20 years ago, it was very much about service conversations and writing service agreements into contracts that would probably stay static for quite some time. Whereas the experiences now in the world that we live in are changing more dynamically. So we have to respond to that. Now, what that actually requires are experienced champions. That highly engaged workforce require champions in that industry, in our industry, to be evangelizing and driving the experience conversations. And those things that are going to change over the course of time are the narrative that we're having with customers. We're also going to target the conversations. We have to target different conversations now because we're trying to understand what the unmet needs are within a consumer base in an organization. We need to have the ability to recognize and capture those unmet needs. We can't just talk about them. We need to actually have tangible experiences that we can bring back and we can start measuring and report, have we made a difference to? And we need the ability to connect the data indicators. We talk, and I'm sure Neil and others have talked around X, T, and O data in terms of the different types of data points that we can gather. And these are all abundantly clear, and they should live and be part of your service delivery ecosystem. But it's about the connection of what customers' unmet needs are and the ability for us to connect those to the transactions or the points, the moments of truth within the ability to deliver. All right, so that's kind of a very quick view of how I see service delivery and kind of our frameworks that have been in the industry for a while evolving and how we're now elevating experience to a higher authority. But how we do that, I believe, is by targeting internal communities in our organizations through education. So we now need, and we have a duty of care as service professionals who I would say are leading the way in terms of experience management movement. We now have to make sure that this is part of organizational DNA by talking to different stakeholder groups. And I generalize in three areas. The service operations and management communities, largely the community that are using that framework. The sales force and client managers of our organization. So these are the organization, the functions that are managing either selling or selling value or selling experiences, but also managing clients, and our executives, right? Our executives who are shaping how this is in the organization. And what we also have now is the emergence of new best practices and frameworks and enablement tools. The fact that we're all talking today on this topic is evidence of more frameworks and resources that are available now that weren't around maybe 10, 15 years ago, in the same way that we are now very mature in using ITIL and things like that. I'm sure in the next 5, 10 years we'll be equally as mature on XLA management. So in terms of service operations and management, what are the things we need to focus on? So this is a high maturity group of people, lots of process improvement and efficiency driven activities, and we have an abundance of tools, processes, and best practice out there. However, we also have a perception, that we've got to break that and change that perception of how service ops and management work. They're seen in some lights as still being a support reactive organization, and that's really driving some of the limitations that we're seeing around pushing into other parts of our mindset change. Transactional support driven, and also often lacking an experience management framework that can now help make that transitional change. Across our sales force and client managers, we've got very good relationships. So we need to lean on commercially focused conversations and the ability to unlock those conversations with customers. But one of the things we need to be mindful of is relying on products and service specialists, and the incentives may be misaligned with that community. And the last group are the execs. who of course have an ability to shape company culture, lead by example, embed the ways of working, but also direct efforts, priorities, and investments, but often are very distant from the transactional activities that we may be involved in, and requires aligned management structures and a need to see business results. And part of my decision to join Apogee that I'm thrilled to be part of is that I now have, I feel, the ability to influence my peers and my colleagues around the execs and the way we lead the company, also having the experience of service ops management and delivery to try and form these things together. So in summary, some takeaways that I'd just like to share. And these are statements, but also I want them to kind of provoke some thought. So experience management now is a necessity for consumer businesses. You know, it's here. We've got to address it. We can't ignore it. Get your service ecosystem established and performing, and that is by establishing a credible and workable framework. Believe in your capabilities and have the confidence in your worth. I think worth is a word we underuse. You know, worth and value. You know, your worth is very important. Everyone in your organization plays a role in creating experiences, and that's where the data indicators and how we adapt and adopt become powerful. However, perfection is the enemy of progress, so do not try and perfect things. You know, do what matters and do what is enough to address what matters is my advice. Humanize each challenge. How would you address this, and try and take away the automation or the technical answer? You know, the tech can't quite act as a human. We're getting close with AI, but you know, humanize each challenge. Gather feedback and learn fast at every moment of truth. Consider your experience management office approach, and that may be actually expanding what you do in your service management practice. It doesn't have to be a separate functional entity. Target your specific communities to evangelize and drive the experience culture, and that's probably where a lot of the heavy lifting is, if I'm honest. Certainly now where we are. But incentivize, recognize, and reward based on contributions to experience. Okay, and that, I think that is an important change. And overall, keep things simple. It's easier to adapt and adopt if we don't complicate, if we don't get too complex in the way that we position, and if we try and take something away from what we've learned over the last 20, 30 years in the industry, I think it will stand you in a very good stead moving forward in your experience journey. And then all of this, I've not mentioned XLA many times. You know, do all of this, and before you even realize it, you're actually making a commitment to experience level agreements and management, which actually is the next is the next move, and is the container or the vehicle that is used to commercialize your experience management with customers. Thank you very much. I hope that's been useful. I know it's been short. Any questions?
I hope we do get questions, because there's a couple of things that you've talked about here that's I think super important, Steve. Thank you for that. One, there's a lot of people in the audience who are always, and you know who you are, complaining that the executives are the barriers to entry. Now, I think under any measurement, Steve, and I'm not just doing this to flatter you because you're here, you are certainly an enlightened executive. And I'm wondering, for the people here who are maybe themselves very enthusiastic about experience management, but they may be confronting the barriers of getting to the executive, getting the budgets, getting their buy-in. How do you motivate your executives as the Chief Experience and Operations Officer? How do you get your executives on board? And do you have any advice to people who may be struggling with a less enlightened executive about getting this on the board?
Yeah. Okay, so there's two parts to that. So I'm very fortunate. I'm very lucky where I am in Apogee, and as part of my decision to join is that I do have an executive team that I'm working with, and a boss in James, the CEO, who is very much on this journey. Right, it recognizes this is an important part of what we are doing, and the strategy is very much wrapped around creating customer-centric experiences. So that makes it easier for me. So those conversations are easier. But I think execs need to be they need to experience the results by channeling the conversations and measuring business enablement, so outcomes for the customer as opposed to commitments we make through an agreement or a contract. I think you have to go beyond what a contract says, because that contract rarely gets rewritten over the term of an arrangement. But what changes on a regular basis are the consumers or the buyers of that service's emotional needs. So I think you have to somehow have some tangible outcomes that demonstrate, because you've acted a certain way or you've addressed something differently, it's enabled you to have a really empowering, productive conversation, whether that be growth, whether that be on a way you've dealt with an issue, or just building a stronger relationship between the organizations.
Do you get, well, when you I've got to be careful how I phrase this question, because you were very successful leading the service and operations organization before. Do you see any difference to make that spring? Because I think a lot of people, you said, you called it out, Steve, a lot of people are working in organizations where most things go right most of the time, that they're on top of the operations. What does it take to make that adjustment and move on? Because you're doing well, right? You're already doing well.
So I'm quite a tough critic on myself. I never feel as though I'm doing well enough, and maybe, I mean, it's all about perspective, of course. So what may be, a challenge to me may be an advancement in someone else's eyes. So I respect that. The challenge I have right now, for example, with Apogee, is the heritage and the legacy, or it's not legacy, but where Apogee are known for its managed print service, and now we're moving much more into the managed workplace, and that requires a shift. So it's almost around demonstrating that if you do the right things, irrespective of the product, the technology, or whatever it is you're producing or serving, good looks good. And that takes different journeys, and different organizations will take their own journeys in their own industries. So I think you need to be tenacious. I think you need to believe in the ability. That's why I use the words worth. People need to have a worth, and I think that worth is what you use as a vehicle to try and address those challenges, whether at a senior level or where you're just trying to break down barriers within your own internal teams and functions in your business.
Cool. And I think another thing that I love when I listen to you is you're also showing a career path for people. Because if I look at, I remember when we were having a conversation, you hadn't yet decided on accepting the role, and you really wouldn't tell us who it was. But it's kind of cool to show that by moving through the phases of operational excellence, that you can get to a board level role and you can make a difference. I think it's important that people have role models, that it's worth doing and you can get there. Have you got any comments on that?
So I feel both lucky and privileged to be in this position, but I'm it's quite daunting as well. I'll be very honest to this community, because I joined this organisation with no real history of the managed print business. However, that in itself, I think, was what was appealing to me. It was a commitment that we are changing. We are making that change, and we are making that change by being quite unapologetic in our pursuit of growing and evolving in the managed workplace, but also bringing in different types of thought leadership. We need people with different perspectives, different experiences, and that to me spoke volumes. If you want to change, you've got to make a change in anything in life, right? So that was really I was really fortunate. Now I would love to see more service professionals or service delivery, service management professionals have aspirations to do the same, right? And I am a stark supporter of service professionals moving into parts of the organisation where they can have a greater influence. It's very early days for me here, of course. I've been here less than 4 months, and the the things I'd like to do and want to do will often be balanced with the reality while running a day-to-day business. But I think I'm very lucky. I'm very fortunate, and I think there's a lot that organisations can learn from and work within their service delivery or their managed services businesses. I think we've demonstrated over years there's a strong talent pool there.
So that's super cool. I think we're very privileged to have you. I've got a comment from Simon Lara. He says it's not a question, but I'm going to make it a question. He says, look, implementing a lot of this is actually free. So, building credibility with changes you've implemented, tying it to business goals. He says, I'd argue you don't really need executive support to implement a lot of this. It's just the last 20% that's getting their language right. And he also says, hey, you may already have budget for other things in other areas that you can reallocate, especially if you believe they'll provide more value to the company. Do you have any views on that?
I think this is about culture. I think there's lots of initiatives and things you can do that play into the experience economy, but I think businesses at its core need to be experience centric driven. They need to change and pivot the measurement that drives how businesses respond and act. And I think you need senior sponsorship to do that. Otherwise, you hit a ceiling within your organisation, and that could be met with a difference in incentives or recognition. So you have to be aligned. I think if you're not aligned across the organisation, from sales communities, solution and product pre-sales, through to delivery, through to every other team, internal HR, corporate functions, you have to be aligned. As I said earlier, everyone has a role to play and experience. It's whether it's a big role or a small role relative to the perspective of how that's being delivered is what each organisation needs to find. I'm not sure if I answered the question, because it was like 2 or 3 parts in that question.
No, but I think Simon, that you're happy with the answer. It's more of a reflection on Simon's perspective on how you can make change without having all the authority and all the buy-in. You can still do a lot. I guess that's really the bottom line.
And just to echo, absolutely, and we will as a community, and we should be pushing the envelope constantly on this. But yes, it doesn't, I absolutely don't, I'm not endorsing that everything needs to have an exec sponsor or an authorization to proceed.